Cuban Revolution, the Viet Cong have demonstrated, what have they demonstrated? And I think
Yeah.
that was the time when that stuff was still fresh. So at that time, you were seeing these uprisings,
Yeah.
but what has the result been 50 years after those things? And I don't think anyone would want the equivalent of the Cuban Revolution or the Viet Cong starting
No.
in their country, because I don't think they would like the 50 years down the road kind of situation that we see in Cuba and that we see in Vietnam. Vietnam is doing better off than Cuba, but I don't think we'd want that.
Yeah, so I have a few comments. So I was gonna say, I mean, the whole third world, first, second, third world thing doesn't even really apply because originally first world meant, you know, capitalistic, sort of democratic nations. Second world meant communist, powerful nations, and third world were what we'd call developing nations. And like they could have been on either side, but they were sort of figuring out their place. And obviously, both the first and the second world each wanted them on their side. So people still use that expression. I mean, I'm not one of these people who's bothered by it, but it's like it is kind of a misframing of the issue in the present day. Because then, like, the other thing too is like, you know, people would talk about, oh, Africa's full of third world countries, but then it's like, well, wait a minute. I mean, South Africa is and still would be classified as technically a first world nation. Countries like Moldova and Eastern Europe would be considered third world living standards. Like they say, I'm not going to say it's common, but it's been said that Moldova is one of those places you may pass out, wake up missing a kidney. Like that type of thing happens there. Like it was one of those countries that just like collapsed after communism and just didn't get its act together. Now I know a country like Georgia was the opposite. Georgia, they said, like really bounced back strong. So you know, that gets into governments, private property, how that was managed. You know, that's a whole thing in of itself. I want to say, I mean, Castro came into power in the late 50s. So at the time he was running this, it had been about a decade. But again, I guess it was tough to say much about Castro. I mean, aside from the Bay of Pigs and the Cuban Missile Crisis. So I don't know if word got out yet about all the blacks and gays being put in concentration camps. Marcuse may or may not have known about that. Who knows? The Soviet Union, that stuff had come out already. This, I'm not sure. Vietnam is kind of an interesting case because they, you know, they eventually became more capitalist and they actually like Americans now because we come over and spend money, and they call the Vietnam War the American War, which is, you know, kind of funny. But, you know, obviously they're in a much better place now. Let's see here. It's interesting. He uses the word faith. We talk about the religious themes in Marxism. There you go. What else was I going to say here? External revolution. Oh, yeah, and I was going to say this is also a very Leninist argument, the idea, because they were trying to figure out why was there a Marxist revolution only in Russia, which was one of the most backward countries. Like, I think Marx himself actually thought Russia would be one of the last countries, because the idea was it would probably happen in, like, Britain or Germany, which were way more modern, but instead it was Russia. And one of Lenin's theories on this was that because those countries had outsourced their exploitation to their colonies, so the idea was they were getting rich off the backs of the people in the colonies. So then people took this later down the road and said, well, to spread capitalism, we have to reach out to these people and get them to overthrow their governments, and then they'll help spread it worldwide. That was one of the reasonings behind this.
With this, I think one thing I'd like to see is also the elemental socialism in action. When they talk about that here, I wonder what are these elements? I know they're meaning elemental in kind of more just general sense, but I want to use that like the elements. What are the primary elements of socialism do the people think haven't really been enacted in the West in general, like in the United States of America, besides the universal health care? But you already have Social Security, you already have Medicare, you already have Medicaid, you already have a lot of like, the Obamacare type of thing, or the Affordable Care Act. There's already type of things. If you go to a hospital, you'll still actually get some care. They're not like, oh, it's going to kick you out. Yes, you might have a lot of bills after. There's issues to do in them. But then what systems do they think are lacking? The public schooling is there. The public transport is there. Like this facilities, there's the welfare state.
Public housing
what is lacking, huh?
Like public housing, like Section 8 housing and all that. Yeah.
What exactly is lacking that they say, oh, we're actually living in this capitalist space? I think it's, as we mentioned before, I think it's more like neo-fascistic, where you have these private entities that have been granted monopolies due to their favors with the government. So the government's like, instead of us having to actually try to control these things, we're going to let you or certain fields, let a few major parties be dealing with that. You have your competition in there. So as long as there's 2 or 3 of you guys battling together, we can say that's not a monopoly. But as long as the 2 or 3 of you guys all give our like through the lobbyists and the revolving door between the different industries, and we'll kind of just coexist together. And you have that kind of situation where that's who the top people are, that's who the quote unquote elites are doing. So that system is already in there. I think at the top it's neo-fascistic, but for the average person, there's lots of socialist actual elements already in actual society. So I don't know how much more socialist people think it can get. How much higher do you really think the taxation can be? How many Americans would really be okay with 50% taxation? I don't think that many. Like, I don't think enough to actually vote on that actual thing. Whenever you hear, oh, we need to raise the tax here, we need to pay their fair share, there's never numbers tied into that.
No.
Very few of those people actually understand how much of a percent of something like income tax the top 10% pays, and something like 70% of the income taxes are paid by the top like 10% of the country. Most people would not be able to say that, and that's the thing. Like, that's what I'm saying. We're getting to a point where these things cannot really get pushed over too much further, because these things have lasted due to ignorance, not because of people who are informed and still support these things. It's just people don't know what they supposedly say that they do support. Yeah.
Well, somebody I know just shared that meme of Bernie talking about like, oh, the billionaires have seen this much of an increase in their income during this pandemic and all this. It's like, well, okay, guys, you're the ones cheering on the lockdown. They're shutting down small businesses. Saturday Night Live can still film with a live audience, and they can make fun of small business people trying to stay open. They're all hugging each other and stuff, no mask, anything. These people are already millionaires. It's like you're supporting all the policies causing this. Like, they don't see the connection. And this is why I get so angry at these leftists. It's like they don't see the connection between the policies they advocate and the effects. It's like, oh, just tax the rich leave. Oh, well, we need to raise the money. Okay, tax poor and middle class. Hey, why are things so expensive? It's like, what did you think was going to happen? You know, if you have millions or billions of dollars you can afford to leave, people are not going to just say, yes, I'll stay here to pay 60-70% of my income. Who would do that? I mean, I think it was Sean Hannity even talked about, like, you know, even if you just, you know, he has marginal rate. I don't know if he still lives in New York, but he did for a time. And he's like, marginal tax rate. Then you have to add on state and local taxes. New York City has its own tax. There's various hidden taxes. You add it up, it's over half the income. And it's one of those things where, like, yeah, you can afford it, but it's like, what do you get in return? Like, I don't want to just give away half my money for.
Thank you for listening. This has been a clip from an actual longer recording that I'll try to leave a link to on the screen or somewhere around here where you're listening to this.
Pendants. 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 Pendants.
Peasants.
Okay. Okay.